Good morning, everyone. My name is Lee Davenport, and welcome to today's webinar. On behalf of US Ignite, thank you for joining us today as we present information on the Project Overcome RFP submission process. US Ignite is a national nonprofit accelerating the smart city movement and creating value for an entire ecosystem by guiding communities into the connected future, creating a path for private sector growth, and advancing technology research that's at the heart of smart city development. In today's call, we will provide you with an overview of Project Overcome, a new project funded by the National Science Foundation designed to explore novel approaches to connectivity for unserved and underserved communities, with an eye on replicating these efforts on a national scale. Themes that you'll hear today will center on innovation and technology and the community, the ecosystem, needed to support technology deployment and adoption. These elements are at the heart of our work at US Ignite and the guideposts of Project Overcome. Dr. Erwin Gianchandani from the National Science Foundation will join us today, along with Nancy Jamison, also of US Ignite. We look forward to presenting to you today and hearing your questions that come up on the 1 hour call. Some quick housekeeping notes as we get started. This call is being recorded. A link to the recording and the slides will be posted on the Project Overcome landing page by Thursday of this week, November 12th. Note to all participants, you will all be in listen-only mode, though you can submit any RFP related questions at any time using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit that question. Clicking that button will draw up a box where you can type in a question that you'd like us to look at. We'll draft up responses and post as many as we can get to as they come in. Use that chat feature for general comments. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our special guest from the National Science Foundation. Dr. Erwin Gianchandani is the NSF's Deputy Assistant Director for Computer and Information Science and Engineering. In this role, he contributes to all aspects of the management of the Science Directorate, including strategic and human capital planning, formulation and implementation of the Directorate's more than $900 million budget annually, and oversight of day-to-day operations. In the last several years, he has led the development, launch, and implementation of several new NSF investment areas, including smart and connected communities and platforms for alternative wireless research. Erwin?
Thanks so much, Lee. Can you hear me okay?
Great.
Excellent. So good morning, Lee. Good morning, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here this morning. It truly is, and it's great to be able to help kick off this webinar about Project Overcome. As Lee mentioned, I'm Erwin Gianchandani at the National Science Foundation. I've had the pleasure of interfacing with the US Ignite team over the course of many years now, and particularly over the course of the last few months in the context of Project Overcome. And while we wish we were doing this under better circumstances, we wish we didn't have a pandemic serving as the motivating factor in some sense, it's nonetheless really great to be able to come together around what I think is a very important fundamental challenge. I think we would all agree, a very important fundamental challenge with respect to trying to close the digital divide that we see across our country. I think the pandemic itself has really exposed the need and really offered kind of a newfound and growing motivation to be able to close this digital divide, whether it be the ability to have access to real-time data and information about COVID-19 that can be informative to all different kinds of communities and all different kinds of individuals about what's going on in our backyards, whether it be having access to data and information about where one might go to get tested or go to get treated if we have potential symptoms associated with COVID-19. And then I think a third factor too that really surfaced as part of these discussions is the issue around education and workforce development. We've seen so many of America's youth across this country over the course of just the last few months have to make a complete pivot from going into the classroom every day to now all of a sudden having to do their education at all different grade levels from elementary school on up, have to do their education remotely. And I think it's self-evident that the inability to have access to high-speed broadband connectivity can truly be inhibiting in terms of being able to provide for those sorts of remote learning experiences and educational opportunities, and can thus have drastic consequences in terms of our next generation of talent whom we're trying to bring up. And so given this context, this sort of motivation in terms of what we're seeing with respect to the digital divide only furthering the challenges associated with the pandemic, we also recognize that we have an opportunity in the sense of new and innovative networking technologies, some of which have been powered by NSF-funded research going back over the course of several decades, that really could potentially be brought to bear to help individuals all across the country in regions that have traditionally been underserved or unserved to be able to potentially have access to broadband connectivity, hopefully not just once, but once and for all as well. And so in that context, those are the factors that really served as the motivation and the fodder, if you will, for us to think about Project Overcome as a genuine opportunity to be able to experiment, to be able to experiment with new solutions, and to be able to do so in communities where we feel connectivity is potentially the most critical, the most needed at this point. Now, I want to emphasize that this is an investment in novel approaches for deploying broadband capability, but one that we hope will stimulate and allow us to be able to uncover not just promising practices in the design and deployment of technology within communities, but also to be able to help us with valuable research on the societal indicators, that the societal impact indicators that allow us to be able to best measure the societal impact of more widely available enhanced access to broadband services. Some of you know the National Science Foundation, which is helping to support this activity, and you know about our Smart and Connected Communities program, where we've seen some of the most creative technology and deployment solutions evolve as a result of partnerships between people and organizations that and who are committed to improving the communities where they work under a shared set of objectives. And so really here, we're looking for not just the technical advances and innovations in terms of broadband connectivity and access to broadband connectivity. We're also looking for the societal impact indicators and the research that can go along with that. If you have technology, you have humans in the mix, and we have to understand how those come together. And we're also deeply interested in trying to be able to bring together civic leaders who are well connected to the communities that are underserved and unserved, and who have the potential through these sorts of partnerships to be able to help us better understand those communities, better understand the challenges, and potentially better understand how we can mitigate those technologies with these broadband deployments. We've found that the most successful partnerships in our Smart and Connected Communities program are multi-sector and multidisciplinary in nature. So again, bringing together local users, bringing together academic faculty and students, bringing together nonprofits working in the communities, anchor institutions, philanthropic organizations working in the communities that have a deep interest in supporting the user base in those communities and addressing the challenges that those communities face. And that is what we are specifically really trying to be able to seek through Project Overcome with this particular use case around helping to enhance broadband connectivity in underserved and unserved communities. The design of the project really is to be able to provide, and by the way, I mentioned multidisciplinary. Again, I think bringing together technical experts as well as social scientists, experts to bear as part of these multidisciplinary teams, I think is something that's critical in our minds anyway, to being able to see success out of these efforts, the longer term success. And that speaks a little bit to the design of the project, which is really to provide seed funding and advice to help catalyze these partnerships that I talked about, to help allow NSF researchers to study the factors and processes that make various different types of approaches to enhancing broadband connectivity more or less viable. Our motivation at the end of the day is really to take the technical solutions coupled with social science research to really be able to have that refined understanding that can help inform how we can then, beyond this particular effort, start to think about scaling into other underserved, other unserved communities that could benefit from access to broadband connectivity. So again, it's really our hope that this effort, this project, will result in replicable methods that will better connect the currently unconnected, and that will serve as a guiding light for us as a nation as we try to not just come out of the COVID-19 pandemic, but also use this as a learning opportunity, use this as an opportunity to potentially also address one of our foremost challenges when it comes to broadband in this nation. So with that, let me close by thanking the NSF and US Ignite teams who have been so critical to getting this activity funded and getting this activity off the ground. And on the NSF side, I especially want to acknowledge the program officers, Deep Mehdi and Joe Whitmire from the Computer Science and Social and Behavioral and Economic Sciences Directorate at NSF, Directorates at NSF, who've been instrumental in seeing this activity through. Also Gracie Narcho, Gurdeep Singh, and Nicholas Goldsmith, who've been actively involved in this effort. And then on the US Ignite side, I think you're going to see many of the folks who've been instrumental in this effort to date, but I especially want to acknowledge Joe Cochin, Bill Wallace, Mari Sibley, Nancy, who'll be on the webinar, and Lee, who's on the webinar as well, for all of their efforts too. We really hope this is an effort that we can look back on 5-10 years from now and say, we took a challenging situation with COVID-19, we tried to pursue some new approaches in that context, and as a result of that, we have now been able to help our nation as a whole when it comes to broadband connectivity and the value proposition of the use cases that we can see emanating from access to that broadband connectivity. So with that, thank you all. I wish you the best of luck with this effort and this program, and I really look forward to seeing the proposals that come in, and more than that, even the projects that we end up funding too down the road as well. So Lee, back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Erwin. We appreciate your leadership on this effort and NSF's continued support of communities exploring technological advancement. So into the slides. The first slide here summarizes key information on the program, starting with the US Ignite's webpage and a link to the RFP announcement. RFP document is available on US Ignite's website for viewing and downloading. Please be sure to read the document in its entirety to understand the specific requirements in this RFP. Full and complete proposals are due on January 8th, 2021 at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We'll cover the specifics of what a complete proposal is and how to submit it on this call. This submission date should allow us to announce the funded projects in February, and you should plan for kicking off your 12-month efforts in March 2021. Due to the nature of the RFP review and selection process, please direct all questions about Project Overcome by email to overcome@us-ignite.org. That's overcome@us-ignite.org. Questions on today's webinar and or by email will be posted on a frequently asked questions page, accessible through the Project Overcome landing page. We are monitoring the Q&A section of this Zoom, so please submit questions as you have them. As we get started, I want to share a couple of slides that lay out the need for this project and describe the response that we've assembled. To set the stage for how the NSF and US Ignite arrived at Overcome, it's vital to level set what we know about broadband connectivity today and its importance in our lives. We'll also talk about research from 2020 that helped us understand that role in the communities play in connecting their residents. Then, as appropriate for 2020, we'll talk about the impact of COVID-19 on our understanding of what the digitization of our lives, which led us as a nation to think about the need to connect more to its vital resource, the internet. If you're watching this on a computer or even a phone, let's think the bits and bytes that got my words to you in real time, thousands of miles away across more than 34 states from which you have registered, including Puerto Rico and DC. For a crash course on the internet and its internet access, we look to a study from Broadband Now. It's an excellent example and summary of the differences between what some reports filed with the FCC have reported in terms of connectivity in the home, 21 million lack broadband, and what third parties have found. 42 million people lack broadband internet access in the home. This interactive display, viewable at Broadband Now, has a breakdown at that state level. They have a great study methodology. I encourage those with questions to check them out on the link that's on your screen now. 2 data points that will help us contextualize that number 42 million. In October 2020, there were 11 million persons unemployed in the US. That number was down from a peak of 23 million seen in April 2020. So the number of people who can't get to broadband at home, according to this study and others, is at 4 times that number of the unemployed people. They can't attend online classes, they can't help their kids with some problematic homework, Skype their elderly mother, you get it. Odds are that some of you on this webinar lost your job in 2020 and needed broadband to search for and apply for that job you have now. So that's context 1. To further define these data points, I should say that the term broadband here is the FCC's definition. 25 megabits per second down and 3 up. Suppose this was a work meeting, not a webinar, or a telehealth appointment, a tutoring session, or a socially distanced Zoom book club or religious service. In that case, we'd be talking about how inadequate 25 and 3 really is. A recent report from US Ignite in partnership with Altman Salon, we looked at how cities bridge broadband gaps effectively. We wanted to understand the characteristics of cities that were working in partnership with the private sector to connect their residents to the internet. For the purposes of this study, US Ignite and Altman Salon looked at hybrid service models where public and private investment helped enable at least 50% of its footprint to access of 250 megabits per second broadband speed or greater. To their credit, in these well-served cities, the private sector alone is responsible for its customers' connectivity in 92% of that footprint. In another 1,000 cities, the triangle here that we've outlined, the private sector, the nonprofit sector, the public sector worked together to enable more people, schools, municipal buildings, and businesses to get connected. Collaboration with public and private sector partners reach common and shared goals to benefit all partners. We found a wide range of models using incentives and subsidies, concessions for anchor institutions and municipal buildings, multi-year partnerships and joint ventures, shared infrastructure, conduit and rights of way usage. You can read more about these models in the process at that link on this page. So it's well known that we can get a lot more people online. It's well known that non-traditional partners can play a role to meet those common goals. And then COVID happened. So looking back at the spring and summer, the pandemic showed us where the disparities were all along. We suddenly had a society where being online was equated with learning in schools, earning through remote work ubiquitously, and patients gaining access to telehealth. In March, a study from the Pew Research Center allowed us to think specifically about a student use case. The data showed that where households with school-age children, age 6 to 17, had income of $75,000 or greater in annual income, 94% of these households had high-speed internet access at home. But only 65% of households with children age 6 to 17 had annual income below 30,000 had access to high-speed internet. So 35% of these families with students weren't online at all. The narrative that led us to overcome are examples of so much work that many on this call have been doing for years, taken together with other societal norms shifting, challenges in each of your own communities that make connectivity relevant to you, and continuous digitization of our society. US Ignite and NSF see an opportunity to explore new and novel broadband access solutions to reach those on the margins. Because of large-scale efforts to expand broadband access can take years to complete, we've designed this project to take advantage of novel and innovative approaches that connect people quickly and that have the potential to be scaled out to other communities nationwide. Many of you have asked, what is novelty? It's something that couldn't or wouldn't have been done without this project that creates a new collision of ideas and people. Here, proofs of concept demonstrate creative and risk-taking approach. So really, are these ideas developing your new idea? And is there a positive risk and reward payoff? To invention, choice, and or configuration of technical, social, and organizational variables. Will this participation in this project elicit combinations of entities from non-traditional partners across sectors? To deliver outsized technical and social results, can this new project deliver outcomes bigger and better than expected? To connect unserved and underserved populations to the internet? How will this new project deliver on the stated goals? For societal benefit, what benefits to society will be realized as a result of this new project? Here are some potentially inspirational examples to get your brain moving in the right direction. You can find details on these projects on the US Ignite Project Overcome website, available for download and review. Be inspired by, improve on, and or combine these with your own ideas in creative ways. Overall, how can you use new technology in a new way to deliver new results? What technical add-on or what new social component are you bringing to create this new project that brings meaningful changes to this existing solution? Successful applications will need to have any political, regulatory, financial, and logistical hurdles identified with a plan for success. Project Overcome seeks to support explicitly novel approaches to broadband connectivity that will result in replicable models to reach the currently unconnected. To do this, we'll be looking for projects that include technology partners capable of leading novel broadband technology efforts, community partners capable of leading outreach and local adoption efforts, application partners capable and with a deep understanding of online education, telehealth, and other application areas, and academic partners to assist with the design, the deployment, and assessment of these projects. We seek to support a variety of approaches for the underserved and unserved in this project designed footprint across urban and rural and places in between. The 5 selected proposals will reflect a mix of population density characteristics, demographics, geographic regions, housing types, local and industry collaborations, and technical approaches. So, US Ignite resources we're dedicating to this project. We'll scan, working with the allies that we all have. We identified resources including Muni Networks, National Digital Inclusion Alliance, Benton Foundation, Next Century Cities, and the Institute for Local Self-Resilience to build a baseline of understanding here. Solicit to design and distribute this RFP to manage applicant inquiries fairly from teams that should draw from a combination of academic, nonprofit, industry, government, student, and volunteer partners. So to select, assess projects, and obtain NSF concurrence for about 5 projects, to augment with additional funding and in-kind resources, to support with spectrum and license conversations with our federal partners. We'll award and manage about 5 300,000 proofs of concept that use innovative technology, as well as creative deployment models that leverage both the private and public sector partners. We'll oversee. We'll hold regular communication with the 12-month project. Generally speaking, March 1st to February 28th, where we'll provide technical assistance and capacity building support. We'll review collected data that measures the technical and social impacts of different connectivity strategies to discover patterns of success that can be repeated on a larger scale across the country, and to catalog the distinctions that emerge based on variations of community served. We'll document and publish approaches to expand the broadband internet access and to replicate projects where possible. Now I'd like to turn it over to US Ignite's Director of Finance and the Project Overcome's Project Manager, Nancy Jamison. Nancy?
Thanks, Lee. I'm going to walk through the proposal submission process. If you've read the solicitation, there are detailed instructions. I am not going to go over these in detail. I'm not going to read them to you. But before I move on, I want to bring two requirements to your attention. Please note that the total page count of 12 is a mandatory requirement. You will also note that in the instructions, we have recommended page counts for each section. These are not mandatory, they're merely recommendations. In addition to the instructions for each of the 8 sections, we have made this very simple such that the merit review criteria align with each section of the project description, except the 9th criteria. When you are drafting your project descriptions, please reference the project description solicitation instructions and the merit review criteria. The 9th criteria reflects our goal to ensure diversity and balance within the Overcome portfolio. These merit review criteria can be found in the solicitation. We have suggested up to 2 pages for the project plan description. This section is critical as there will be only 12 months to design, build, and operate your proof of concept. And we want to know that you're ready to take off running if your project is awarded. In this section, we want a description of your milestones, tasks, activities, deliverables, and key staff assignments for the 12-month project period. The solicitation instructions ask that you describe the project steps, responsible and participating parties, and timeline for the proposed project. We expect that your plan will include 3 phases: design, deployment, and operations. We are also asking that you include a Gantt chart or equivalent to show the main task. A sample Microsoft project plan is provided here. We would expect to see 15 to 20 project steps in a typical plan. If you want to show a more detailed Gantt chart, it can be placed in the supplementary documents. When preparing your plan, plan your project based on the performance period from March 1st, 2021 through February 28, 2022. In the next section that I want to touch upon is the budget information and sustainability plan. We are asking you to explain how you will spend up to $300,000 in cash provided by the National Science Foundation in the first 12 months of design, deployment, and operations. We are requesting that you break down expenditures by capital expenses, deployment expenses, and operational expenses. Being sure to note whether any members of the proposing team, whether nonprofit or for-profit, will be receiving a contract for services or equipment. Just a few notes. You will be expected to follow NSF budgeting rules, so be sure to look online for those rules on the NSF website. You must include your federal negotiated indirect cost rate agreement, otherwise known as NICRA, your NICRA fringe and indirect cost rates. If you or your subrecipients do not have a NICRA from NSF or another federal agency, then you and your subrecipients may use a 10% de minimis rate. Indirect costs are based on all direct costs except equipment, participant support, and subawards greater than $25,000. This slide provides an example which includes the major cost categories shown in the first column. Please don't forget to provide a pro forma operational plan that demonstrates that you can sustain the project for a second 12 months of operation. If necessary, you may provide more detailed breakdowns in the supplementary documents section. Supplementary documents and information are optional. The biographical summaries are optional. There is no recommended or preferred format for the biographical summaries, and there should be no more than 10 summaries. However, anyone for whom there is a summary must be registered as a co-author in EDAS, and I will explain EDAS shortly. Contributed resources I will address in the next slide. Letters of support. As explained in the solicitation, these are usually 1 page each, but complex relationships may require 2 pages. Letters should be included from the listed partners and, where reasonable, from community leaders in the unserved or underserved communities. Letters are also sought from each community's governmental chief technology officer, chief information officer, or equivalent leader. All letters of support should document the writer's commitment to the proposed Overcome project and level of facilities, resources, and services they are making available for the project, including, where applicable, but not limited to, equipment donations or support, site rentals, campus or community IT support, fiber backhaul, power provided to the sites, expedited permitting as may be needed for some technical solutions. Contributed resources. Proposers and or proposing partners, including cities, local governments, universities, anchor institutions, nonprofits, tribal organizations, cooperatives, and for-profit companies may contribute resources including cash, equipment, people, rights-of-way, conduits, buildings, roof access, pole access, spectrum, FCC licenses, supplies, training, PR, testing, evaluation, meeting, training, and assembly venues, fundraising, devices, fiber, indivisible rights of use, security, project management, governing boards, and or insurance. Where any of these or other contributed resources are material to the project, their estimated monetary value, if it clarifies their contribution to the project, should be mentioned in the supplementary documents. Please do not include these in Section 5, Budget Information and Sustainability Plan. You can describe or itemize your contributions in the supplementary documents. The list on this slide provides a broad range of contributions that your proof of concept may need and that you may be able to obtain from your partners. This is not meant to be prescriptive. It's only to help you think about the kinds of contributions you may want to seek. As a reminder, there are formatting requirements. I'm not going to focus on these now, but simply ask that you review the solicitation to ensure that your proposal is consistent with these before submitting. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the EDAS system, we recommend that you give yourself extra time to upload documents. There are only 2 PDF documents required, but depending on the number of individuals named in your proposal, each individual will need to register in EDAS and complete their conflict of interest. The first step in the process will be to register your paper. The second step will be to add authors. You will need to name all key team members by providing emails. EDAS will then send each author an email. EDAS will identify an individual's initial list of conflicts of interest consisting of individuals having the same email domain, the same name, or those that have co-authored EDAS registered papers with the individual. To add more conflicts, individuals can click on the conflict of interest link in EDAS and provide either the name of the organization, the name of the individual, and or email domain. We will conduct a fair, competitive merit review process for the selection of 5 Overcome projects. Conflict of interest rules will be implemented consistent with the National Science Foundation policies at all stages of the review and award process. Therefore, before any proposal is reviewed, we will determine whether there are any conflicts of interest. That's why it is critical that when you upload your proposal to EDAS, that you ensure that all key team members, such as the project lead, co-leads, other personnel, unpaid consultants or collaborators, the project's subrecipient staff, postdocs, and project level advisory committee members are registered as co-authors in EDAS so that any potential conflicts of interest identified by EDAS can be addressed. Screening. Upon receipt, we will screen all proposals to ensure that your proposal is eligible for consideration. To be eligible, the lead organization must be a nonprofit organization as defined in the RFP or an academic institution. If you are not sure whether your organization is eligible, please feel free to email us well in advance of the submission deadline and we will be happy to answer your questions. Remember, for-profit institutions are not eligible to be the lead institution. Cash budgets must be $300,000 or less. Project description must be in one of 5 typefaces and 11 points or larger font size. Again, please read page 12 of the solicitation for these requirements. Our initial screening process will deem any proposals ineligible without recourse. EDAS will not permit you to submit more than 12 pages for the main body of the proposal. With that said, US Ignite reserves the right to request additional information at any stage of the review process. Evaluation. A committee of independent, non-conflicted experts will review and evaluate proposals and provide recommendations to US Ignite. In consultation with the National Science Foundation, US Ignite will make the final selection and funding recommendations.
What we'd like to do now is we've gotten 8 or 9 questions that have come in so far. I'm going to start, Nancy, and I'll read a couple here that we've got responses for, and then maybe I'll pass it to you for 3 or 4 questions. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. All right, so we had a question, must proposals include an innovative technology to be competitive? Or could an innovative approach, partnership and financing model, et cetera, sufficiently elevate a proposal? Innovation in technology design is a key criterion for selection. In some cases, the technology itself will be novel. In other cases, its method of deployment, its combination with other technologies, or innovative use for specific purposes will improve on well-known successful approaches. Second question, will regional and multi-jurisdictional proposals be considered and or seen as competitive? There must be a defined community of unserved and underserved households, anchor institutions to be connected. Partnerships serving that defined community may well be regional or multi-jurisdictional in nature. Note the request for governmental IT leaders to provide letters of support. Multi-jurisdictional proposals may require multiple letters depending on how the community to be served is defined in their relevant governing bodies.
Someone asked the question, are we allowed to subcontract with private companies? While for-profit companies are ineligible to lead overcome projects, nonprofit organizations or academic institutions may subcontract with for-profit companies for products and services. The outline of any proposed contract should be described in the Budget Information and Sustainability Plan. However, we encourage for-profit organizations to contribute resources to the proposed project. Someone also asked, application-based interested parties can help evaluate the benefits of online education, telehealth, and other application areas. What other areas? We trust the proposers will know enough about the communities they intend to serve to identify the most critical application areas for each community and identify interested parties. There was another question, is there an interest in precision agriculture applications? The primary goal of the Project Overcome is to connect unserved and underserved people in defined communities. Precision agriculture coverage may be an interesting extension of the service, but the main focus should be on connecting communities of people. There was another question, will the applicant and its subs be required to register with SAMS.gov? No, you are not required to register with SAMS.gov.
So thanks, Nancy, for that. I want to say that I have the honor of asking and answering the most frequently asked question. Will this proposal be available to us on the US Ignite website? Yes, the video and the PowerPoint presentation will be posted on Thursday this week, November 12th.
Someone also asked, what do you mean by sustained second year of operation? Can you elaborate on it? Is it mandatory to include a second year budget? The RFP calls for a simple pro forma operational plan so that reviewers can understand the longer-term sustainability of the project, including any potential ongoing funding sources. A detailed plan or budget is not required. Oh, there was a January, good question. There was a January 5th, 2020 deadline on the previous slide. Is that a typo? The slide reads, upload your proposal to EDAS and submit no later than 5 p.m. on January 8th, 2020. Another one is, could you please post the NSF budget rules? Yes, these can be found in the National Science Foundation PAPPG, Proposal and Award Policies Procedures Guide, available at the NSF website. Please be sure to look for the 2020 version. I think it's the June 2020 version that you want to look for.
Can you send the Q&As that you have answered out after the meeting as well? The FAQs will be posted on an FAQ page. We've already started the page. It's a live web page. I would encourage you to check back on that page with some frequency. Obviously, this week we'll be having the bulk of the questions and responses, but do check back in the future, as we'll not notify folks that FAQs have been added, but we will post them on a live web page available and accessible through the Project Overcome website. Can projects currently underway be considered? We are looking for innovation. Additions to current projects can be considered. As the questions kind of pile up, I do want to, I'll say this again at the end, sincerely thank everyone for registering and attending the phone call. We look forward to receiving proposals. This is by no means the end of the call. We have, looks like about 5 or 6 more questions that have come in. And so we are getting to those. We're just going to take a minute. Does the application have to serve a broad range of populations? We are looking for unserved and underserved communities. Overall, Project Overcome will look for a diverse set of communities. However, each individual proposal, thanks everybody for hanging in there. Still looking for a few extra questions. Again, anything we don't get to today, there are several questions that are going to take some more time. We have 4 or 5 questions piled up that we're not going to get to, just because it's going to take, from looking into it from our side, there are 5. In addition to the, so far 23 questions have been recorded. We've answered, it looks like around 15 or 16 of them. And so we will post all these questions on the FAQ website, again, with the recording of this webinar and the slides that we've used today. So one question here, with $300,000, one can only go to a certain deployment to the community. Would the proposal with strong novel solution approach with lab testing or small scale testing be considered competitive? Lab testing may be part of the solution, but deployment to an unserved and underserved community is required. We appreciate everyone's patience as we get these questions answered and reviewed. There is a significantly intellectual, highly intellectual team working on developing these responses and approving them. I mean that in complete honesty. Some great people in this project.
There's a question in the chat box that I'll be happy to answer. The question is, what is the 10% de minimis rate mean? That means if you do not have a federally approved negotiated indirect cost rate, you may use 10%. You could use 0% directed, but you can use up to 10%. Hopefully that answers your question.
I can get one out of an easy one out of the chat box too. 5 p.m. East Coast time is the delivery deadline. That's an EDAS cutoff will be 5 p.m. East Coast time, Eastern time. Someone had asked for some example projects, past projects funded. This project is a new project with the NSF. We did perform a scan of some recent novel applications of the technology. Those were referred to, I don't know, back earlier in the slide. those write-ups are accessible. It's about 20 pages or so of write-ups of those novel application approaches are accessible on the Project Overcome website. I encourage you to look at those if you want to be inspired.
There is a question. What if a private company is providing more than 25,000 of goods? Is there a limit of only 25,000? No, there is not a limit of only 25,000. There is no limit at all to contributions. Let me start there. Secondly, that $25,000 limit is only the base against which an indirect cost may be drawn. So if you have if you're using that 10% rate against, you can only charge up to that 25,000, and you can only draw 2,500 in indirect costs, but there is no limit to what a private company can contribute. And there is no limit to how much you may need to subaward to a contractor or a subrecipient. If you do not get your questions in today, or if additional questions arise, please, we will be posting this to the website, and please use the email address provided. We will be happy to answer your questions, even if you have questions later after today.
We're going to give this 1 or 2 more minutes, and I think we're going to wrap this up. Looks like there are about 40 questions that came in. Looks like we had time to get to about 17, 18 of them, which is, I don't know, I thought pretty good. I encourage people to continue to submit questions in by email. If you want to make sure your question got answered, we recorded all, looks like about 35 that came in through chat or FAQ. Write your question down before you close, because this chat will not be saved. We'll save them on our side too, though, of course. We'll address them, draft responses, and get them out to you. We'll post the FAQs and responses within about 24 hours to make sure that we're okay. Check back to the website at that point. Again, I want to sincerely thank everyone for joining today. It was really a pleasure to talk with almost 200 people that were on the phone today. I want to thank Dr. Gantt from the NSF for joining us, and the several staff at NSF. I want to thank Nancy Jamison and the PIs and co-PIs of the project here at US Ignite. And we look forward to seeing your comments, questions at overcome@usignite.org. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day.